HealthWish is a series of conversations about the state of healthcare in New York City's fabulous fifth borough, Staten Island. Our goal is to raise issues, raise awareness, and raise health. Because when we raise health, we raise everyone.
Frank cares deeply for his community.
Frank is a great mentor. He taught me so much.
Frank is just an overall great guy.
Frank has always been someone that I can go to for advice and guidance.
I am the leader I am today because of Frank Morisano.
Welcome to HealthWish. I have the pleasure of being here with somebody who has the moniker of Angel, somebody who's one of New York's bravest, somebody who's been serving the people of Staten Island for his whole career, and most importantly to me, someone that I can call my friend, Frank Morisano. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You have an amazing story, and your path through life is truly something special. And I thought it would be really wonderful to kind of give you the opportunity to tell Staten Island your story.
I actually wasn't born on Staten Island. My parents were. They met and married here, but moved to Manhattan for like the first 2 months of my life. And then we came back to Staten Island, and I've been on Wyndham Avenue till I married my wife. And then we moved out of Wyndham Avenue up into Oakwood. So yeah, lifelong Staten Islander. Been here forever. My father, he was a fireman as well, encouraged me to become a tradesman. He wanted me to be either an electrician, a carpenter, because I was good with my hands. And that sort of motivated me to go to college. I did 1 year at the Staten Island Community College, which is now CSI, and then I transferred up to Cortland State University. So I graduated from college with a social work track, and in my time in college, my roommate's father was also a firefighter, a New York City firefighter. My father and my roommate encouraged me to take the firefighter test, which when I graduated from college, I got a job at South Beach Psych Center. It was called a MAHATA, a mental health therapy aide, which is the equivalent of a PCA in our business. For a 22-year-old, it was an eye-opening experience.
It's a different time.
So then I was doing that for about a year and a half. The fire department called me, and I was making not a lot of money, and the fire department doubled my salary in one fell swoop. So let me take a shot. What's the worst that happens? If I don't like being a fireman, I'll go back to my social work track.
So that's your first pivot.
My first pivot.
Right, so
Yeah.
You were doing something, you had an opportunity to change your life, and you actually didn't expect to like it.
I didn't like it, I loved it. Retrospectively, it was my calling, to be a firefighter. I worked in a busy neighborhood on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, for my whole time on the job, and it was just a lifestyle. I'm still friends with all the guys I was firemen with that are still standing.
So if you spend any time with Frank, I always have to be careful that you can't call Frank an ex-firefighter, because in your brain, once you're a firefighter, you're always a firefighter.
Forever.
But even back then, you definitely gravitated towards certain kinds of things that maybe your average firefighter didn't.
So I sort of gravitated to the medical even back then. And the neighborhood I worked in, East 2nd Street and Avenue B, was the epicenter of the second or third heroin epidemic that I've lived through in my life. When I was a kid, there was one, there was that one, and is the current one now. And we were doing 2 or 3 overdoses a day, literally. That's not an exaggeration. And it's when Narcan was first developed. We saved a lot of lives back in those days, between the paramedics and the fire department and the police department. All of us were invested in that. Rough neighborhood, but learned a lot.
So then you had your next bit of adversity.
So I was a fireman for about 8 years, and I got hurt on a job. It was at a fire. I was thrown off the back of the rig through circumstance, and I shattered my right ankle in June of 1988. So in that moment, my life changed. I didn't think it did, but the thing that I remember the most, fire department orthopedic surgeon comes to visit me. And, he tells me, yeah, kid, everything's, do what they tell you. It's the right thing to do to get it fixed. And what are you going to do in your next life? So now I'm not even hurt 2 hours. And I look up at the doctor and say, I'm going to be a firefighter, doc. He goes, no, you're not, son. And then, he basically walked out of the room. So I did about a year of rehab and, multiple operations. And I was 30 years old when I got hurt. So I was in nursing school before I met my wife. And then we were married a year and a couple of months when I got hurt. I was back in nursing school in September of 88.
Just a quick question about that period of your life, because adversity is something that we all go through, and it's so difficult for people that love what they do to all of a sudden have to change it. And yet, to go through that at a fairly young age, where all of a sudden someone's going to walk into a room and tell you you're not allowed to do the thing that you really love doing, that's a tough thing. And what advice would you give to the people out there that actually have gone through this or are going to go through this? Because sadly, these things do happen.
They do. And it was a real hard period in my life. Even though I had a direction to go in, the job that I loved was no longer going to be the job that I did. Even though I consider myself a fireman at heart till today, it was rough. I mean, I had periods of anxiety. My advice is, if you're going through that, face your problems head on. And fortunately, I worked with a gentleman, Steve Wachsel, back in South Beach Psych, who now works for Northwell. Hooked me up with a pretty good therapist even back then. It was still kind of stigmatizing in 1988, 89, 90 to go see a therapist. But he got me through that dark period in my life and, showed me that at 31, 32 years old, my life was not over. It actually was just beginning.
Ask for help.
Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Ask for help.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, no one can help you if they don't know what you're going through and they don't know that you need the help. So then you go to nursing school and you find your way into Staten Island University Hospital, but not as a nurse. Not as a nurse. So that's a funny story. I applied to the hospital because I wanted to become a PCA while I was in nursing school, to hone my skills. I was looking to educate myself on the process. So about 2 weeks after I applied, I get a call from Pat Urbano, who used to be the head of security. He goes, you want to come to work for me in security? I'm like, well, Pat, I was thinking of becoming a PCA. He goes, come to work for me. We'll work around your schedule. You'll go to school. Still a couple of guys I work with at the hospital. Jerry Nelson, was one of the folks that I work with. But I got to know the hospital. I was the security guard in front of the ED, at night for a year. And I found where I wanted to start my nursing career. Back then, they didn't take you into the ED right away. You had to have a year or two of experience. So I went up to 3E, which back then was a neuroscience unit. I learned a lot about being a nurse on that unit. Great people. Regina Lama actually was the nurse manager there, and Regina Lama is still one of our assistant directors. She covers the night shift at both sites. So her and the woman named Kathy Odorisio really taught me a lot about being a nurse back then. So then transition to leadership, right? So this is a really hard thing for some people where, they become a nurse, they become a physician, they become a PCA, or a radiology tech, and they like their job, they like what they're doing. They're intrigued by the opportunity to become a leader, and yet it's such a huge step in so many ways. You made that step and then did it pretty seamlessly. What was that transition like, and what do you think it led to for you?
So when I went to the emergency department, after about 6 or 8 months, I became a charge nurse. I was a little older than most new nurses. I had 10 years of experience behind me. And running the board in the ED taught me, well, I consider myself a leader in almost every job that I ever had. I'm an Eagle Scout, but I always went to attain the best position I could in the situation.
Eagle Scout is no joke. You should be very proud of that.
I am it's still hanging in my office. Yeah. I am very proud of it. It's right there next to my degrees. I was a charge nurse there, and Donna Prosky became one of my mentors. After about 2 or 3 years in the ED, I applied for a assistant director of patient care services job on the evening shift because I was thinking about going for my master's in hospital administration. So, I applied for the job, I interviewed with Donna, and I didn't get that first job. So Donna called me directly and said, Frank, you're gonna get a job. It's just who you're competing with at the time. Keep trying. And from that point on, Donna became my mentor until she left the hospital. And the next job that came up, I applied, and I became an assistant director of nursing. Got to know the hospital once again, every nook and cranny of it, both North and Princess Bay. Back then it was called South.
If you have the itch to become a leader, at some point you have to take a chance on yourself.
Yes.
Right? So if it's something that you want to try, at some point you just got to say, you know what, I'm going to try. Because if you wait for that perfect moment,
it's never going to come.
It's never going to come, because there is no such thing as the perfect moment for you to do something. There's always something in your way. It's just a question of, can I make it work? Right. So that for me is the second part of the story for you. So then you progress several places along the way. You've mentored a lot of people, but you have a lot of mentees that have risen to pretty significant heights in the organization or to different organizations, right? And talk a little bit about mentorship and talk a little bit about how important you think that is.
I think mentorship is the most important thing we could do for each other. And as I said, Donna Prosky was my mentor, and she actually advised me to leave the assistant director of nursing job and become a unit manager, because that would give me the skill set I needed now to climb through the nursing ranks. So I did about 4 years on 3C as the manager, and then I came in and I mentored. Actually, I was mentored there as well. Jeannie Piccola was one of my mentors there. But we had a lot of people on that staff that went to leadership positions, through 3C. And my job as a leader is not to hold you on 3C, not to hold you in the ED. It's to develop you to go to a position where you think you could do the most good and it's going to satisfy you the most. And every time I think of mentorship, I think of Karen Travell. You know, Karen Travell and I basically came to the ED at the same time, and we bonded when her husband Bob got hurt. They actually brought him into our ED, so we took care of Bobby. And then Karen and I, from that moment on, had a symbiotic relationship. I sort of went up a little bit ahead of her, but she guided me, I guided her.
You were one of the best I ever saw at not feeling that you had to hold on to every person that reported to you, right? Like if it meant growing someone and it being the right thing for the organization, if you're a manager out there watching this, if you have a special person and you have the opportunity to have them leave your service to go do something, you never know what that's going to lead to. And the relationship that you get, even professionally and personally, is well worth it. You were always one of the best at that. And it's one of the things that I truly respected about you is you have to let people grow, even if it means some of them are going to grow away from what you're doing. That's okay.
No.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Like Claudette Hill, who is one of my colleagues now. We work together in community health. Claudette and our paths have been intersecting since she started in the hospital.
In and out.
In and out. And, you know, she's another one that I have mentored and has also taught me a lot. You know, it's a two-way relationship when you mentor somebody. It's not me preaching at you to do this. It's listening to each other, finding your interests, and giving you tools and a roadmap to get to where you want to be.
You and I together actually received the Angel Award from the Maffeo Foundation. It was a very special thing I know for both of us.
That award came a couple of years after we built the new ER, the new ED. We worked very closely with the Maffeo Foundation. Linda Manfredi's brother, Joe, was one of the people that perished that day on 9/11. So their foundation has done a lot of good on Staten Island. One of the good things that they did was help us build a pediatric ER in his memory. It meant a lot to me for a lot of different reasons. One, the good that we did building that new ER for Staten Island. We built it and they came. But it recognized, I think, our devotion to our community and our devotion to making people better. And I'm not a guy that really is the spotlight guy. So to get that award was touching to me, and it meant a lot. And it's still up in my office, and it will be in my house when I leave my office.
Join us next time as we continue the conversation. HealthWish wishes to thank our special guests, Dr. Brahim Ardolic and Frank Morisano. We're very interested in your health wish. Contact us at healthwish@northwell.edu. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.